Hello there, lovely authors. Welcome back to Fiction Author Business School. So this week I got a question via email that I thought was a really excellent question and one that a lot of people are probably struggling with. So this author says, I love listening to your podcast, but I can't devote all my time to writing every day. How long would you recommend to work daily on a short novel to stay on track? I find I'm getting distracted with new research and adding the missing elements to my story and feeling overwhelmed and freezing. How would I break out of this, or what do you recommend? So, in terms of how often you work daily, that's up to you, and that really is going to depend on your schedule, but I don't think that's actually the crux of the problem. It sounds to me like the problem is that when you sit down to write, you're not getting all of the writing done that you would like. So I think your real question here is how to stay on track when you are trying to get your writing done during a writing session, rather than getting distracted and then ending up not getting anything done. Okay, guys, this is a very common problem for most authors at some point. I've been through it. Most people have been. So we're going to talk about how to make sure that you can stay on track when you sit down to write, exactly what to do. I'm going to give you some steps so that every time you sit down, whether it's for 30 minutes 3 times a week or 2 hours every day, you are maximizing what you're getting done then in terms of your writing, and that you're moving forward on your manuscript every single day. Okay, stay tuned. Hi there, aspiring fiction author. Welcome to Fiction Author Business School. Do you want to write your stories with ease and confidence? Do you find yourself Googling how to write a fiction book or how to write a character arc? Do you want to create a fiction empire, but you can't even finish the story you're currently working on, and you find yourself doubting it will even be good enough? Hi, I'm Liesl. I too have been writing stories since I was just a kid. I wanted to do something about my fiction writing dreams, but got information overload every time I looked for writing help because there's just so much out there on the internet. I wanted confidence that I wouldn't disappoint my readers and a plan to publish regularly. I knew the foundation of any author career, including the marketing aspect, is a stellar and well-written story, but I didn't know how to be sure that my story was solid. I went on a journey to figure out what really makes readers tick and how to incorporate those addictive elements into my story. In this podcast, you'll find specific, tactical fiction writing tips, solutions to writing more words more efficiently, and secrets to mastering your author mindset. So, put on your fuzzy slippers, grab a notebook and pen and some chocolate, and let's write some fiction. Okay, so I get it. I've been there. Even with the best intentions, sometimes we sit down to write and then realize that there's something we haven't planned in our story or haven't done enough research on, and how can we possibly move forward without doing that, right? Well, a lot of the times we can. We just don't think we can. It kind of functions as a shiny object syndrome sort of thing, where because we're not sure what to write next in our story, or maybe we're a little overwhelmed because we have a lot to do still and we're just feeling a little bit inadequate, it's easier to leave the writing and go work on something else, right? So we have to be aware of that, first of all, that it's just a mindset thing. It's something that we're nervous about or intimidated by, and that's why it's easier to go do something else, and we need to stay in, the work. We need to stay in the trenches and keep going. But of course, the other possibility is that sometimes you run into something you haven't planned or haven't researched enough, and you really can't move forward without doing some work in that area. Like you can't write the next scene or the next chapter until you have that figured out. And then if you try, you'll just end up having to rewrite it, right? And we don't want to waste our time. So either one of these is possible. And I'm going to address kind of how to circumvent either one, okay? Or work your way through them. So here's the thing. Being haphazard about what you're going to be doing or not doing during any given writing session is really not the best way to maximize productivity. In fact, it's probably the worst thing you could do, because this is exactly what happens. If you do not know exactly what you're going to be working on, you're going to get distracted by this shiny object, that shiny object, and of course it can be something else in your manuscript that you need to, like we said, we need to plan or we need to research, but it can also just be getting distracted by the internet, but getting distracted by Pinterest, by your TV, by your kids, whatever the case is. And believe it or not, it's usually the case that when you allow yourself to be distracted by these things, it's really not these distractions that are the problem. I mean, we all live in a world of distractions, right? You are allowing them to distract you because something is keeping you from working on your writing. It's generally something that's subconscious, and you probably don't realize you're doing that. So if you're thinking, yeah, but my kids really do come knock on the door. Yeah, I get it. But there are ways around that. You can set some standards, you can, set some boundaries and make sure they know this is your writing time. I mean, there's plenty of other podcasts and blog posts that talk about that, about, really guarding your writing time, getting your family on board, turning off distractions, all of that. But what it comes down to is that if these things are still distracting you after you've done all that, maybe you need to do all that and you haven't yet, okay, then go ahead and do it right now. I give you permission. But if not, we are also allowing these things to distract us because there's something about our writing that we don't want to get to. And you guys, I've experienced this recently. I kept dragging my feet on an editing project, and I realized it was because there were some things that I didn't quite have planned or figured out yet. And so on some subconscious level, I knew I couldn't complete the editing until I had that figured out. And then I went through my notes and realized I actually did have most of it figured out, but I just didn't have it front of mind. So if I had just sat down and reread my notes and made sure that it was all really fresh, I probably could have gotten my editing done a lot faster. Okay, we all do this. It's a very human thing to do. So how do we make sure that that's not happening with our writing? Well, I want you to imagine something with me. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you are going to go to a theme park, okay? It's going to be a really fun day. You're going to be there for 5 or 6 hours. You love this place, and there's a lot of different things you want to do. There's rides you want to go on and places you want to visit and maybe even food places that you want to hit. It's going to be a great day. So you head into the park and you immediately see something that you want to do, and you start heading toward that attraction. But then to your left, you see something else that you also want to do, and you kind of go, oh, well, maybe we should do that one first because spatially we're closer to it and we don't want to end up backtracking, okay? So you head toward the second attraction that you really want to do. Then you look over to your right and there's a favorite food place of yours that you want to hit, and you want to eat there, and you're actually kind of hungry right now, but you also figure that maybe you should eat after this ride so that you don't eat and then go on the ride and get sick or something like that. But spatially, it comes first as well. And so you're going, okay, well, when I decide to come to that food place, I'm going to be backtracking a little bit. Okay. And of course, if it's just a handful of things, you can figure out what's best to do first. But if you keep doing that all day long, you're going to end up zigzagging back and forth across the park, wasting time, standing in lines that maybe you didn't need to stand in, possibly getting sick from eating at the wrong time, right? And potentially missing a lot of things that you really wanted to do, either because you just forget about them and miss them, or because you just don't have enough time, right? Now, contrast that with, planning your trip ahead of time, sitting down beforehand and looking at a map of the park to figure out the best routes and times to move through the park without much backtracking, figuring out the times and places that you'll eat, the rides you're going to go on, the attractions you're going to go see, all of the activities you're going to do, when you're going to do them, and what would be the best order to do them in so that you're really maximizing your fun time while you're at the park, right? And then sticking to that itinerary as you go throughout your day. My point is, if you do something like that, you're going to have a lot better experience and you're less likely to miss out on the things that you really wanted to do. Now, the one place that this analogy fails is that with writing, you can always come back later and, do another writing session or whatever. And a lot of times when we go to these theme parks, they're expensive. They're like a one-time-a-year thing. And so we only have a certain amount of time, and then that's it, at least for the year. But my point is that if you can get a lot more done and be a lot more efficient in a short amount of time, obviously that's going to work better for your writing, right? So this creating a plan and sticking to it is true of traveling and doing, more physical activities, but it's true of your writing as well. And if you want to make sure that you're getting done everything you plan to when you sit down to write, to actually have a writing session and don't get distracted by other things, then I have 4 suggestions that should help keep you on point, okay? The first is to plan as much of your novel as you can in advance. I know this depends on how much of a pantser you are, but the more you plan, the fewer tangents you'll go off on. So if the question that was asked in the email, if you realize that there's something you didn't do research for or some aspect of your story that you haven't planned out yet, that is specifically what's distracting you from actually getting the writing done. So try to plan that in advance so that when you sit down, you know exactly what's going to happen in the scene you're going to write. Maybe even have the beats in front of you, and then you can just zoom through it. You know, there's actually there's a book about this. I believe it's the one that's called 2K to 10K, and I'm blanking on the name of the author. But that's basically what she says. If you plan what you're going to write before you write, you will get so many more words done in a single writing session than you could if you're just willy-nilly off the top of your head trying to get the scene down. Okay, she used to write 2K in a writing session. Now she can write 10K. That's the idea of the book. So I get that everybody's different on this, particular aspect of things, but plan as much of your novel as you possibly can, and even be detailed enough to plan what you're going to write when you sit down. Because even if you have your whole novel written, if you're looking through going, what scene should I write next? Because I know not everybody writes scenes in, chronological order. It could take you 20 minutes just to figure out what to write. But if you take some time beforehand and say, this is the scene I'm writing, maybe write down a few beats, this is what happens in the scene, this is how the characters feel in the scene, this is kind of the theme that's going on here, and then you sit down, you're going to pound that thing out so fast, you're going to be so much more efficient, okay? So that's number one. Number two, block out time to work on your writing. Now, do as much as you can each day. I know that some people write daily and some people don't, but that's not really the point right now. No matter how much time it is or how many times a week it is, know specifically when you'll be focusing on your writing and stick to it. So I've talked about this before. Lots of people have talked about this. Just guard that time very, very jealously. If you are allowing something to get in the way, then of course you're not going to get your writing done that day. And even if you do it just this one time, there's a good chance it's going to be easier to keep letting that slide away from you. So sit down and do this very intentionally, guys. Some people say, oh yeah, I do that, but they don't really do that. They kind of have a vague idea of when they're going to write this week. But take out a calendar and specifically block out time. This is what you're doing during those hours, and you're not doing anything else, and then do it. Okay? Now, the third suggestion I have is, I kind of already touched on it, but plan what you're going to be doing during that time. Now, this is the crucial part for not getting distracted. If it's a writing day, write. Nothing else. If while you're writing you discover a missing element that you need to flesh out, that's fine, but put it on the calendar for tomorrow or a later day in the week. Stick to what you plan to do today. Now, that said, not every day has to be a writing day. You might have a day that you are doing your outlining and planning, or days that you're doing research, that you're doing creative discovery of your story, or anything else that you might need to do in your writing process, okay? Some days you might just need to take a walk and think about your story, and that's part of your process, and that's fine. But the point is, plan for it that way. And that way, on the days that you plan to write, you're getting your writing done. And when you're, I think part of the problem is we're going, okay, I need to get this done, but I really need to do this creative discovery so that I can figure out this aspect of it. And in the back of our minds, we're thinking, I'm never going to have time to do that because I have to write. And so we end up doing it now. But if you plan for that, then you don't have to do it now. You can do it when you've put it in your calendar, okay? So just make sure it's planned for so that you're doing it, but also make sure and stick to the schedule. Whatever you have planned for today, make sure and do that. So the fourth suggestion I have is just that. Stick to the plan. It gets its own number, because this is where just good old-fashioned discipline comes in. We all get distracted. I do, you do, J.K. Rowling does, we all do, okay? And we have to develop discipline and stick to our plan so that we can always be moving forward in our writing, okay? There's not any big secret to this. There's not any magic thing you can do to make sure that you're sticking to your plan. You just got to do it. You got to be disciplined. Like I said, you got to get your family on board, tune out all distractions, and just be determined that this is my writing time, and therefore I'm going to get my writing done, okay? So let's recap those. In order to make sure that you're getting done your writing when you sit down to do your writing, that you're maximizing your productivity during your writing sessions, number one, plan as much of your novel as you can in advance. Number two, block out time specifically to work on your writing, as in sit down with a calendar, block it out, make sure that everybody's on board with it who might be living in your home. Number three, plan specifically what you're going to be doing during that writing time. Now, this comes on a couple of different levels. Number one, plan whether you're going to be writing, editing, creative discovery, research, whatever you're specifically going to be doing. And then when you write, the second level is maybe even plan out what you're going to be writing. Get some details of the scenes. It doesn't have to be a huge, massive 10-page outline of the scene, because that would probably just be the scene anyway, but just, a few beats, a few reminders about what's going on with your characters so that you have it there, front of mind, just to refer to, and then you can just off to the races, get that chapter pounded out, okay? And number 4 is stick to the plan. Develop discipline when it comes to your writing time. Don't let yourself get distracted. It takes some practice. You might have to, practice saying no to some of those distractions a few times, but once you've done it a few times, it'll start to come pretty naturally. So just stick to the plan and be disciplined about it, okay? Okay, so that is pretty much what I have concerning this question, but before you go, I do have an announcement to make. I am currently putting together a new program that will help with exactly this sort of thing. It's the kind of thing that will help you get your novel written more quickly, and of course, quick is totally subjective to you and your writing process, but whatever it is, I think we can definitely make it faster and more efficient for you. It works for planning and outlining, it works for pantsing, it works for all kinds of things, and it's exactly these sorts of things that I'm going to teach you to do. In the next episode, later in the week, I'm going to talk about it in more detail. But for right now, if you are interested in hearing more about this program, you can go and join the advanced interest list. It's at bit.ly/fiction by design. I will also put that in the show notes. There is no obligation on your part. It's just if you want to hear more about it as it becomes available, I will send you information to your email inbox. That's all. All right. So I will leave it there. Everyone have a wonderful week of writing. I hope that you can put a few of these things into practice and get a little bit more productivity out of your writing sessions this week. Make that your goal so you can get more words written, and let me know how it goes. You can come back and message me or email me and let me know if any of these things have helped you at all. Okay? All right, everyone get out there and write those stories only you can write. And remember, there's always a market for awesome. Thanks so much for listening today. Before you go, would you be willing to do me a solid? If you found any value at all in this episode today, would you be willing to share it with other authors just like you in the hopes that they might find some value in it as well? Happy story crafting this week. Remember, only you can bring the world the unique story that you are trying to tell. Only you can succeed in your own unique way in getting it out of your mind and your heart and into a medium where it can reach thousands, if not millions, of salivating readers. You don't have to worry about failure because there is always a market for awesome.